This topic is the law. Now, legal language is known for being quite dry, so I apologize if this section is a little dull, but this language is very important to learn if you want to get to an advanced level in English. The first word is alleged. Alleged. It's an adjective. Let's see the definitions. Number 1. Of a person. Accused of or said to be something, although there is not yet enough evidence to prove it. Number 2. Of a thing. Said to be true or exist, although there is not yet enough evidence to prove it. The adverb is allegedly. There's also a verb, which is allege. That means to state something as a fact without giving proof. It's not the same as lying. What the person is saying might be true, but we use the word allege to highlight the fact that so far there is no proof. And then we have the noun allegation. An allegation is a statement that is made without giving proof regarding something that is morally wrong or illegal. Here are some collocations. An alleged attacker, an alleged burglar, an alleged kidnapper, an alleged killer, an alleged victim, an alleged conspiracy, an alleged crime, an alleged incident, an alleged miracle, and finally, an alleged offence. An offence is an illegal act, maybe a crime or something less serious. The alleged attacker was arrested by the police and taken in for questioning. The alleged alien encounter was said to occur in a local wheat field last Sunday night. But there were no other witnesses, and it wasn't caught on camera. That's often the case, isn't it, with alien encounters? In a wheat field, and nobody else saw it. The next word is amend. Amend. It's a verb. It means to correct or slightly change something that is written or spoken, especially a law, document, statement, etc. The noun is amendment. An amendment is a small change or improvement that is made to something. Countries sometimes amend their constitutions. Here are some collocations. To amend a constitution, to amend a contract, to amend a law, and to amend one's statement. Several members of the parliament would like to amend the law so that it applies to all workers, and not just full-time employees. The witness amended her statement when she remembered something else. And now we have the verb convict. Convict. Be careful with the pronunciation. There is a noun with the same spelling, and that's pronounced convict, but this is pronounced convict. To convict means to announce officially in court that someone is guilty of a crime. Let's see the word family. First, we have the noun conviction. That means the decision that somebody is guilty of a crime, or the process of proving that somebody is guilty. It can also mean a very strong belief or opinion. Then we have the noun convict. That's somebody who has been found guilty of a crime and sent to prison. Here are a couple of usage tips. It is often followed by of. For example, the scammer was convicted of fraud and sent to prison for 2 years. It is followed by on when used with the word charges. For example, several gang members were convicted on drug charges. More often than not, it's used passively. The alleged murderer was convicted at her first trial and then later acquitted when the case was appealed. To acquit is the opposite of convict. It's to officially state that somebody is not guilty of a crime. To appeal, in this context, means to formally request that a decision be changed. The court convicted the smuggler of drug trafficking. Trafficking is buying and selling goods illegally. Now we have a phrasal verb, which is crack down. To crack down means to try harder to prevent bad or illegal behavior and to deal more strictly with the people doing it. The noun is crackdown. A crackdown is an action that is taken to deal more strictly with bad or illegal behavior. Here's a usage tip. It is usually followed by on. The government wants to crack down on tax evasion. If you don't know the term tax evasion, it's illegal ways of paying less tax. So the government wants to try to reduce tax evasion and punish the people who are committing it more severely. The police have decided to crack down on the sale of drugs in nightclubs. You used to be able to park wherever you wanted, but parking inspectors have started cracking down hard. This word is custody. Custody. It's an uncountable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, the right or responsibility to take care of something or someone, especially a child. Number two, the state of being kept in prison, especially while waiting to appear in court. Let's see the word family. First, we have the adjective custodial. That means related to custody. And then we have the noun custodian. A custodian is a person who is responsible for looking after a thing that's important or valuable. Let's see some collocations. The first set is related to the first meaning. We have to be awarded or given custody, to get, obtain, or win custody. Those phrases are normally used when parents get divorced or separate, and one parent then has the right to take care of a child. To seek custody, joint custody. That's when more than one person has custody of a child, usually the two parents. And sole custody. That's when one person has custody. The second set relate to the second meaning. To take somebody into custody. To be held or kept in custody. To be released from custody. That's when a prisoner is allowed to leave. The father was awarded sole custody of his son. The suspect was held in custody for 2 months before she was allowed out on bail. Bail is money that is paid to a court to make sure that the prisoner returns when their trial starts. And now we have defame. Defame. It's a verb. To defame means to damage someone's reputation by saying or writing negative things about them that are untrue. In the word family, we have the noun defamation. That's the act of defaming someone. And then we have the adjective defamatory. That means intended to defame someone. If you defame someone, you can be taken to court. To take somebody to court means to take legal action against somebody. The person or group won't be arrested or put in prison, but they might have to pay a lot of money. The actor claimed that the newspaper defamed him by printing lies about his behavior on set. On set means at the place where a film or TV show is being filmed. And now we have the verb deter. Deter. It means to make someone decide not to do something, especially by making them realize that there will be difficulties or negative consequences. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun deterrence. That's the concept. Next we have the noun deterrent. A deterrent is something that deters somebody. And then we have the adjective deterrent. That means making somebody less likely to do something. Here's a usage tip. It is often used in the following structure: to deter somebody from something or from doing something. For example, it is hoped that the new program will deter young offenders from serious crime. That means that it is hoped that this program will stop young people who have probably committed small crimes from committing more serious crimes. One reason that people are punished when they break the law is because it can deter others from doing the same thing. The negative press that the company has recently received might deter future investors. Next, we have the verb enforce. Enforce. To enforce means to make people obey a rule or a law, or to make a particular situation happen. For example, discipline or compliance. Let's see the word family. First, we have the noun enforcement. That's the act of making people obey a rule or law. Then we have another noun, which is enforcer. An enforcer is a person who enforces something. Then we have the adjective enforceable. That means able to be enforced. And finally, the adjective enforced. If something is enforced, a person is forced to do it. They have no choice. One of the main roles of the police is to enforce the law. And now some collocations. To enforce an agreement. To enforce a ban. To enforce compliance. To enforce a curfew. To enforce discipline. A teacher, for example, might enforce discipline in the classroom. To enforce a or the law. To enforce a regulation or rule. To enforce sanctions. The city recently introduced a smoking ban in restaurants, but it is rarely enforced. The young teacher struggled to enforce discipline in his classroom. That can definitely be a struggle when you're a teacher. Next, we have the word indict. Indict. It's a verb. Be careful of the pronunciation. The C is silent. It's indict. To indict means to officially accuse someone of a crime in court. It means to charge somebody with a crime. It's not the same as convict. Basically, a person is indicted for something before the full trial takes place. To convict somebody is to find them guilty at the end of the trial. Let's see the word family. First, we have the noun indictment. An indictment is an official statement accusing somebody of a crime, or the act of officially accusing somebody of a crime. Then we have the adjective indictable. This either relates to a person who is able to be indicted or to a crime for which somebody can be indicted. Here's a usage tip. It is often used in the following structure: to indict somebody for something. The former governor was indicted for a range of felonies. If you don't know the word felony, it means a serious crime. She was indicted for arson last month and is now awaiting her trial. It was suspected that about a dozen employees had helped to embezzle money, but only a few of them were indicted. Now we have the adjective indisputable. Indisputable. This means true and cannot be denied. The adverb is indisputably. And here are a couple of collocations: an indisputable fact and indisputable evidence. The evidence presented against the defendant was indisputable. A defendant is a person in a court of law who has been accused of doing something illegal. It is indisputable that Frank finished off the cake that was in the fridge. Next we have jargon. Jargon. It's an uncountable noun. Jargon means words and phrases that are used by a particular profession or a particular group of people, which are often difficult for other people to understand. Here are some collocations: accounting jargon, computer or IT jargon, legal jargon, and medical jargon. I couldn't understand the contract because it was filled with legal jargon. The director avoided using scientific jargon in the documentary because she wanted to make it accessible to lay people. Here, accessible means easy to understand, and a layperson is a person who does not have expert knowledge of a particular subject. This word is law-abiding. Law-abiding. It's an adjective. It means respecting and obeying the law. A little usage tip. It is usually used in the collocation, a law-abiding citizen. Up until that point, he had been an upstanding and law-abiding citizen. If you don't know the word upstanding, it means honest and responsible. That suburb has a bad reputation, but most of the people there are pleasant and law-abiding. Locals feel like the police are unfairly targeting law-abiding citizens. Now we have lawsuit. Lawsuit. This is a countable noun. It means a problem or complaint that a person or organization brings to a court of law in order to obtain a legal decision. The short form suit is also sometimes used. Some collocations: to bring a lawsuit against somebody, to file a lawsuit, and then you can add against somebody. Those both mean to take a lawsuit against somebody to a court. To drop a lawsuit. That means to decide to stop your lawsuit. To lose a lawsuit. To settle a lawsuit. That means to reach an agreement that stops a lawsuit. and to win a lawsuit. A former employee filed a lawsuit against the company, accusing it of discrimination. They decided to drop the lawsuit because they realized that they had no chance of winning. Now we have legislate. Legislate. This is a verb. It means to make a new law or laws. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun, legislation. That means a law or a set of laws, or the process of making and passing laws. Then we have the adjective, legislative. That means relating to legislation. Next we have the noun, legislator. A legislator is a person who has the power to make laws. And finally we have another noun, which is legislature. That's a group of people who have the power to make and change laws. Here's a usage tip. This verb can be used with the following prepositions. To legislate against something. For example, the Parliament is going to legislate against exploitative lending practices. That means the Parliament aims to stop financial institutions exploiting people with unfair loans. To legislate for something. They legislated for better working conditions. That means they passed laws to ensure better working conditions for people. And then we have to legislate on something. Only the state governments can legislate on educational matters. That means that only state governments can pass laws regarding educational matters. A couple of the electoral candidates promised to legislate to protect national parks. The government has decided to legislate for stricter gun control. Next we have levy. Levy. This is a countable noun. A levy is an amount of money that needs to be paid to a government or organization, such as a tax. The verb is also levy, and that means to use official authority to demand an amount of money from a person or organization. A little usage tip. It is often followed by on. For example, the government imposed a levy on tobacco. The government's new budget introduced levies on luxury items. The new green spaces are expected to be funded by the landfill levy. This word is libel. Libel. It's a countable and uncountable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number one, the act of writing or printing a statement about someone that is untrue and that damages their reputation. Number two, the statement or information that is written or printed. In the word family, we have the verb libel, and that means to write or print libel against somebody. And then we have the adjective libelous. That means containing libel. Here's a usage tip. Libel is a type of defamation. The other type of defamation is slander, which is spoken words. We will look at slander in more detail later. The singer sued the tabloid newspaper for libel. To sue basically means to take somebody to court, but we'll look at that word in more detail later. A tabloid newspaper is one that often contains gossip and isn't considered as serious as others. Users of this website are not allowed to post information or content that constitutes libel. Here, constitute means to be considered to be something. So users can't post things that are considered to be libel. Next we have loophole. Loophole. This is a countable noun. A loophole is an opportunity that enables people to legally avoid doing something, usually because of a mistake in the way a law, contract, etc. has been written. Here are some collocations. To close a loophole. That means to change something so there is no longer a loophole. To exploit or use a loophole. To find a loophole. A legal loophole. And a tax loophole. It is often argued that rich people avoid paying a lot in taxes due to loopholes in tax codes. A code in this context is a set of laws. Everyone knew that he committed the crime, but he was acquitted due to a legal loophole. Remember, acquit means to find not guilty. Now we have misleading. Misleading. This is an adjective. It means likely to cause someone to believe something that is not true. It's when something gives somebody the wrong impression. The adverb is misleadingly. The verb is mislead. To mislead means to cause somebody to believe something that is not true. Some collocations. Misleading advertising. A misleading impression. A misleading report. A misleading statement. Misleading statistics. Highly misleading. And seriously misleading. The lawyer argued that the psychologist's report regarding the defendant was misleading. The company was fined for its misleading advertising. I'd say most advertisements are somewhat misleading, but I guess some are more misleading than others. Next we have motive. Motive. This is a countable noun. A motive is a reason for doing something. For example, a reason why someone commits a crime. Note, it is similar to the word reason, but motive sounds more serious and usually refers to a strong need or desire. Let's see the word family. First, we have the adjective motiveless, which means done without a reason. And I'm sure you know these ones. The verb motivate, the adjective motivated, the noun motivation, and the adjective motivational. And here are some collocations. A clear motive, the main, primary, or prime motive, a political motive, a possible motive, somebody's real or true motives, an ulterior motive, that means a hidden motive, to have a motive, and to establish or find a motive. The police are still trying to establish a motive for the murder. He said he just wanted to be friends, but I think he had ulterior motives. Now we have the verb prohibit. Prohibit. This has a couple of meanings. Number one, to stop something from being done or used by making it illegal. It's a synonym of ban, but it sounds more serious and formal than ban. Number 2, to make something impossible to do. This meaning is a lot less common and is very formal. Let's see the word family. First, we have the adjective prohibited. That means not allowed or banned. And then the noun prohibition. That means the act of prohibiting something, or a rule or law that prohibits something. Then we have the adjective prohibitive. If something is prohibitive, it stops or prevents you from doing something. Here's a usage tip. A synonym of prohibit is forbid, but it is used a bit differently. Forbid means to say that somebody is not allowed to do something, but it is usually used in relation to personal or societal rules. When we talk about laws and regulations, we normally use prohibit. Here are a couple of examples. Her father forbade her from leaving the house. The new law prohibits the sale of e-cigarettes to minors. Thankfully, there are laws in place which prohibit companies from dumping waste in waterways. A waterway is a river or a canal. Smoking is now prohibited in restaurants. The expensive tickets prohibit most locals from going to the opera. Now we have the verb redact. Redact. This means to remove or put black marks over information in a document in order to keep it secret from certain readers. The noun is redaction, and that means the act of redacting. Personal information was redacted from the court documents to protect the individual's identities. The reports were released to the public, but they had been heavily redacted. It's a verb that's usually used passively. Here we have another verb, which is reform. Reform. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, to make changes to something like a law, system, or organization in order to improve it, to make it more modern, effective, etc. Number 2, to stop engaging in criminal, immoral, or dangerous behavior, or to make someone do this. In the word family, we have 3 nouns. First, we have reform. That means changes or a change made to a law, system, organization, etc. Next, we have reformation, which means the act of reforming something. And then we have the Reformation. That was a period of religious changes in Europe in the 16th century when some people wanted to reform the Catholic Church, and various Protestant churches were started. The new government has promised to radically reform the public health system. She used to often get into trouble with the law, but she has since reformed and now has a stable job and home. Now we have the verb regulate. Regulate. This has a couple of meanings. Number 1, to control an activity or process with rules or a system. Number 2, to control the speed, amount, pressure, temperature, etc. of something in a machine or person's body. Let's see the word family. First, we have the noun regulation. That's an official rule made by a government or other authority, or the act of regulating. Then we have the noun regulator. That can be a person or an organization that regulates, or a device that regulates. And then we have the adjective regulatory, which means related to regulation, or regulations. The job of the FDA is to regulate, amongst other things, pharmaceutical products, food, and cosmetics. The FDA is the Food and Drug Administration, which is an American government body. Ryan needs to take medication to regulate his blood pressure. Here we have another verb, which is restrict. Restrict. This has a couple of meanings. Number one, to place a limit on the size, amount, range, etc. of something. Number two, to limit someone's movements or actions. Let's see the word family. First we have the adjective restricted. That means limited or small in size or amount, or limited in what you are able to do. Then we have the noun restriction. That means a rule or law that restricts something, or the act of restricting. Then we have restrictive, which is an adjective. That means preventing people from doing what they want. And finally, we have the adverb restrictively. This sign restricts the type of sunbathing that people can do. Here's a usage tip. It is sometimes used in the following structure: to restrict something to something. For example, we try to restrict class sizes to 10 students. The new law restricts the sale of tobacco products. Speed is now restricted to 20 miles per hour in the downtown area. Corsets, which were commonly worn by women in many countries in the past, often restrict breathing. This word is safeguard. Safeguard. It's a verb. To safeguard means to protect somebody or something from harm, loss, or damage. The noun is also safeguard. That's something that is designed to protect somebody or something from problems or harm. Normally, it's a rule or agreement. Here's a usage tip. It is often followed by against or from. For example, we hope that the new security system will safeguard the company against or from cyber attacks. The new child protection legislation aims to safeguard the rights of children. It is hoped that the agreement with the workers' union will safeguard jobs. And now we have the verb seize. Seize. This has several meanings, but these are the ones that relate to the law. Number one, to take control of a place using military force, often suddenly and violently. Number two, to suddenly arrest or capture someone. Number three, to take possession of something with legal authority, usually illegal or stolen goods. It's when, for example, the police take goods from criminals. The noun is seizure, which is the act of seizing something. Here are some collocations. To seize an airport, to seize control, to seize drugs, to seize firearms, to seize hostages, to seize power, and to seize somebody's assets. The paramilitary group seized control of the airport. The bank robbers were seized not long after they left the building. The police seized thousands of copies of pirated movies from the warehouse. Now we have the verb sentence. Sentence. I'm sure you know the noun sentence, which means a group of words, but it actually has a couple of different meanings. Here we have it as a verb. To sentence means to officially say in court what someone's punishment will be after they have been found guilty of a crime. Usually, a judge sentences somebody. The noun is also sentence. In this context, in a legal context, it means a punishment that is given in a court. Here's a usage tip. It is often used in the following structure. To sentence somebody to something. The judge sentenced the vandals to 100 hours of community service. A vandal is a person who deliberately destroys or damages public property. And community service is doing things in the local community, like picking up rubbish. She was convicted of burglary and sentenced to a 3-year jail term. In murder trials in this country, juries decide whether defendants are guilty, but judges sentence those who are convicted. Next we have slander. Slander. This is a countable and uncountable noun. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, the act of saying something about someone that is untrue and that damages their reputation. Number 2, this type of spoken statement. The verb is also slander, and that means to say something that is untrue about somebody and damages their reputation. The adjective is slanderous, which means containing slander. The former employee was found guilty of slander after making very negative remarks about members of management. The politician maintained that her opposition's comments were nothing but slanders. You could also say nothing but slander, so with or without the S, because it can be countable or uncountable. Now we have the verb sue. Sue. To sue means to take legal action against a person or group, usually by asking for money because they have harmed you in some way. Here's a usage tip. It is often followed by for. The governor decided to sue for slander. After the death of her husband, she sued the hospital for negligence. They sued the construction company for not adhering to safety guidelines and were awarded $4.5 million in damages. Damages means an amount of money that a court says should be paid to somebody by the person or group that has caused them harm. The company has been sued by several former employees. Now we have a phrasal verb. This is tamper with. Tamper with. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, to touch or make changes to something without permission, especially to try to damage it. Number 2, to unlawfully try to influence someone involved in a legal case, especially a witness or jury member. Some disgruntled employees try to sabotage operations by tampering with the factory equipment. Disgruntled means annoyed and disappointed. And to sabotage means to secretly damage something or ruin somebody's plans. The defense attorney claimed that the evidence had been tampered with. It was widely believed that a police officer had tampered with the key witness. Next we have undercover. Undercover. It's an adjective. It means working or done secretly in order to obtain information for the police or government. An undercover police officer, for example, might pretend to be a criminal to find out information about actual criminals. The adverb is also undercover. That means secretly, in order to obtain information for the police or government. You can say, for example, to work undercover. Here are some collocations. An undercover agent, an undercover cop or police officer. If you don't know what the difference is, cop is just an informal way of saying police officer. An undercover detective. An undercover investigation. An undercover operation. Undercover work. The organized crime group had no idea that 2 undercover detectives had been in their midst for over 6 months. In their midst means among them. The undercover investigation revealed a culture of police corruption in many counties. In case you don't know the word county, it's an area of a state or country with its own local government. It's an administrative unit, in other words. And the last word for this section is violate. Violate. It's a verb. It has a couple of meanings. Number 1, to break or disobey something, especially a law, agreement, principle, etc. Number 2, to enter a place or situation without permission, or in a way that makes a person feel disrespected. Let's see the word family. First we have the noun violation, which means the act of violating something. And then we have another noun, which is violator, and that's a person or group that violates something. In the middle of that sign there, it says no soliciting, no loitering, no trespassing. People who violate these rules will be prosecuted. Here are some collocations. We have to violate an agreement, to violate the Constitution, to violate human rights, to violate a or the law, to violate somebody's peace, and to violate somebody's privacy. The country has been accused of violating international law. You will be violating the terms of the contract if you do not make the payment. The Star said that the reporters outside her house were violating her privacy. Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about the legal system in the US. What I'm going to say isn't overly specific, and most of this is probably the same or very similar in other countries. Don't worry, I'll try not to use too much legal jargon. Firstly, it's important to know why laws exist. Laws exist to protect us from harm and to safeguard our interests. There are laws that restrict certain behaviors or activities, and there are laws that prohibit certain actions or activities entirely. There are also laws in place that regulate particular industries or systems. As society evolves and changes, it is often necessary to reform or amend laws. Sometimes a law is amended when a government decides to crack down on certain behaviors or activities. Sometimes governments legislate to close legal loopholes. Governments also make decisions regarding taxes and levies. It is the role of the legal justice system to enforce laws. Thankfully, most people are law-abiding citizens. At least most of the time. People who violate laws can be arrested, fined, or sued in a private lawsuit. If you defame someone, for example, the police are not going to come after you, but you might be taken to court for slander or libel. If you commit a criminal offense, you might be arrested and held in custody. In some cases, the police might even seize all or some of your assets. If the criminal activity is rather complex or difficult to prove, police officers sometimes do undercover work. But police officers need to make sure that they don't break rules themselves. They shouldn't write misleading reports, for example, or tamper with evidence. Tampering with evidence can lead to an entire case being dismissed. We also need to remember that alleged offenders still have rights. Attorney-client privilege, for example, means that communication between a client and their lawyer remains confidential. Because of this, the lawyer might sometimes redact information from certain legal documents. If the prosecutor's office thinks that the evidence against someone is indisputable, or at least very strong, they will be taken to court and indicted. In other words, they'll be officially accused of the crime or crimes. At the end of a trial, the defendant will either be convicted or acquitted. It is then typically the judge's responsibility to sentence the person. One reason why people are punished for committing crimes is that it can deter others. This surely works to an extent, but people have all sorts of motives for committing crimes, so there will probably never be a perfect solution.